I'm Steve Vibronics, and this is the Life in Dub podcast, talking to people who live their lives in dub and reggae. Episode number 8. Welcome to the 8th Life in Dub podcast, a series that features in-depth interviews with people who've lived their lives in dub and reggae. As with every time, thanks for all the support from all you listeners out there, and thanks for the messages. I try to answer each one, so keep sending them in. You can email me at vibronics@gmail.com or hit me up on Facebook, Instagram, all the usual places. And you can visit the podcast website, lifeindub.com. I hope everyone is bearing up okay under the stress of lockdown and this virus craziness that we are all living through. Like I said last time, it's the toughest time any of us in the music world have known, with show after show cancelled and a huge cloud of uncertainty hanging over all of us. But I do take the time to take some joy from all the love for the music that I see each day across the whole world on the internet. This week, I wanted to talk a bit about Mexico, both because of what I'm up to now and because of the interview in this episode of the podcast. In case you're wondering what I'm up to during the lockdown, for me it's the perfect time to do a lot of background work for a project I have coming up later this year. It's an album called Stepping Into Mexico. Basically, a load of new Vibronics dubs with guest contributions from some amazing singers and players that we recorded last year in Mexico City. I think I mentioned in one of the first podcasts, Mexico is fast becoming one of the main places for sound system dub in the world. From when Madu Messenger and me first went over 10 years ago, we've witnessed this scene grow like crazy. Many of you will know about my love of musical collaborations. So the only way I could really celebrate this amazing movement in Mexico was to embrace what is going on there musically. With the help of Rutical Sessions and Bungalow Dub, we recorded some great vocalists as well as mariachi-style horns and guitars, and even a marimba that was so big we had to go there to record it because you'd never get it out of the guy's apartment. So when I got back, I had a pile of unfinished demo rhythm ideas and tracks of recordings from Mexico. My job the last couple of weeks has been to sift through all this treasure and start to arrange it into something I can mix and then release. Maybe I'll share a few demos as I work my way through it on lockdown, so that's what I've been up to lately. This week, my guest is Ben Alpha Steppa. We actually recorded this interview in Mexico City last December when we were doing some shows together, hence the Mexico connection in this whole podcast episode. This one is a location recording. We were sitting outside, so please excuse the sound quality, but I hope you'll agree that what Ben has to say is worth the occasional car passing by and blast of seasonal Mexican fireworks you can hear in the background. Personally, it was great to interview Ben because he makes amazing music and political actions himself, but he's also the son of John from Alpha and Omega, who are one of the foundation influences on Vibronics. So, enough of me, let's get on with the interview. So Ben, welcome to the Life in Dub podcast.
Thanks a lot, Steve.
I feel I should say something about where we are. And we are on the roof of a restaurant in Coyoacan in Mexico City. Mm-hmm. So I apologise if the sound is no good. We're doing it kind of raw, kind of location recording style. And we happen to be staying in the same place. So it seemed like the perfect opportunity. It's a sunny day. It's December.
You can hear the fireworks in the background. Today is Day of the Virgin of Guadalupe, special day. Everyone's out, pilgrims are out, and the fireworks are blazing high. Scene set.
Living the dream. So what I'm doing with the podcast, some people will be familiar by now, is I'm kicking it off with my first question, which is the same question I ask all my guests, which is, can you name a track that from when you heard that track, there was really no looking back and it changed things for you? So it can be, any way you want to talk about that, then
wow,
that's the opener.
That's a great question, actually. It gets me thinking about all the different tracks that I've heard over the years that have influenced me and inspired me and changed my direction and things like that, changed my life. I think besides reggae, the first album I bought was Dr. Dre's Chronic, 2001. And I think that was released in 99 or something like that, around the turn of the millennium. And I must have been about 13, about 13 years old.
It's a great age to be discovering like new musical sounds.
I'd never heard anything like it, and it was just, to me, it just sounded so fresh. I mean, specifically speaking about Dr. Dre's productions and Scott Storch and people like this, the sound to me was so stand out. Everything was so clean, and everything had its place. Nothing was used within the song on a whim, you know. Everything had its purpose, and this really inspired me, taught me a lesson in simplicity.
And you could hear that in the music at that early age. You could sort of that attracted you to it.
Yeah.
Because I'd say that from, you know, I've been listening to your music since you started doing it, really, and there's some kind of that wasn't me shooting Ben, by the way. That's just some more fireworks. I would say that there's some of that kind of simplicity, everything in its place in the music that you do. So
Yeah,
I guess it's been a bit of an influence.
absolutely. Yeah. Even at that age, I was trying to deconstruct the songs. I wasn't focused so much on the lyrics and the flow and the rapping, but more on the production.
So talking about production and music, I mean, that's how I know you as a producer and musician and artist. So where did it all start for you musically?
Let's say my earliest memories with music would be with my dad of Alpha and Omega, and before that, even my dad.
Shout out to John. Big shout out to John.
Yeah, big love to the old man. He had a sound system, John, in the 80s called Roaring Lion Sound System, and
was that down in the southwest? Was it always in the
southwest.
southwest?
Yeah.
Southwest of England.
never left the southwest. Southwest is best. No, so in those days, he and his friend Colin, they used to run the sound and make parties in barns and what do you call those, like community centres and stuff like that in Totnes and Devon and
Yeah, because we're not talking like urban London, which is what
yeah.
a lot of people associate sound systems
Exactly,
with,
yeah.
especially in UK, is like really urban places. This is like rural towns, villages.
Deep southwest of England, which is where I come from. And I remember I was probably just a few years old, but I remember seeing my dad playing records with his sound system, drinking a cup of tea, and I was just, you know, like anybody, I think you're going to be influenced by that, and those memories stay with you. And I always looked up to my dad, you know, I still do.
A big influence on me, like the music of Alpha and Omega, and I've known your dad a long time, like over the internet, whatever, you know, just done projects, collaborative projects together and stuff, and definitely one of the legends of like the whole UK reggae and dub scene. So where did it start for you in terms of like making music? And
I joined a junk band.
what's a junk band?
Junk band.
It's a genre that's like I must have missed that one.
No, you know what a junk band is? When everyone plays rubbish, pieces of rubbish that you collect from the streets or wherever. You know, don't have that up in Leicester.
That's sounding like a southwest thing to me.
Yeah, I joined the junk band when I was in primary school. This is an early memory. I would have been about, it must have been about 7 years old. And we had this music teacher, and she made this junk band and asked if anybody in the school wanted to join the junk band. And I just jumped at the idea of smashing bits of rubbish and making loads of noise. I used to do it at home anyway with pots and pans. You know, I'd get a hold of the pots and pans and just annoy the hell out of my mum. So I joined this junk band, and I loved it. You know, we were just making terrible noise once or twice a week for half an hour. But it sounds kind of stupid, but actually...
No, but it's an early start, though. It's a seriously early start, and you start making... I think you make a connection that it's like, there's something about this that I want to kind of explore and take further.
Exactly, yeah. Apart from that, my dad would sometimes take me into the studio, and he would let me twiddle knobs and push faders and play around with keyboards and stuff like that. Once we actually made a track. I have it on cassette tape, so if I ever get the chance to digitize that, my dad probably wouldn't let me, but maybe I could play it to you.
Right.
I don't think it could leak on the internet, but it was a track inspired by Sonic the Hedgehog, because I used to love Sonic the Hedgehog. So all the melodies and the samples are from Sonic the Hedgehog. You might get to hear it one day.
But there's a lot of those sounds in, like those digital bleepy sounds in, you know, especially digital kind of dancehall reggae stuff.
It worked well. The song itself sounds like Alpha and Omega meets Sega.
But that puts you in quite a unique position in some ways, being brought up. You know, your father's half of Alpha and Omega, and you're in the studio, kind of like, you know, seeing how music's being made and stuff. So that's it's quite a unique situation for someone to be in.
Yeah, it felt perfectly normal for me, but I can understand it is a little unusual. When I was a teenager, my dad he installed some music software, Sono, Cakewalk Sono, and in those days I was playing instruments, and I was playing in bands. Like I used to play in punk bands and just messing around really with my friends. But he installed this software. I had this really crappy computer with Windows 95 or something like that, and he explained to me one day what you can do with it, and he did a great demonstration. He recorded himself playing a nice guitar lick, some melodies and some chords, and then he took the recording, and this is what stuck with me. He deleted every part of the recording apart from one little part where he made a mistake. So he just made like a crank and like a horrible sound on the guitar, and he kept that part, and then he looped it, and he built a song around that mistake. And
it's like the opposite of what you would learn if you went to music tech, like college or whatever. And because also, I guess in the Alpha and Omega sound, there's always like layers of kind of, it's quite sort of psychedelic, like layers of sound, and so that makes sense. What you're saying about picking a particularly strange bit and then turning that into a track.
I thought he was crazy. I was thinking, why didn't you keep the good part, you know? But in the end, it turned into a great track. So after that, I spent hours and hours producing and just recording stuff and layering stuff. And since the age of 14, I think, my friends were out in the park, and I would just go home and just sit on the computer and produce music, and terrible music for years and years, until eventually
You have to put your hours in at the start, really, don't you? And but also, I think there's something about sacrificing some other things, like doing some stuff with your mates, because you really want to be like putting hours into your music.
How many weekends you spend locked in a dark room behind a computer screen, hoping that it's not going to crash after 2 hours work in those days, and then all your friends are out having a laugh, you know.
So how did it transition from you messing around with your computer into like Alpha Steppa, and also the name and that sort of legacy of Alpha and Omega? That I wonder how all that happened and why you decided to go down that route, and if you want to say a bit about that.
I think maybe in 2008 I started to make music as Alpha Steppa. That was because in those days I just finished university. I was living in Bristol, and I'd been inspired by the dubstep scene in Bristol. I used to go to dubstep nights, and I loved all that. So I decided to start making. I don't know if I decided. I just started making dub. It just happened, really. Before that, I'd been messing around with all different styles and remixing some of my dad's stuff. And then, I just started to make dub. And what happened then? I moved to France. And then I discovered some of the French dub. That was around 2009. And one day, somebody asked me if I wanted to play a session in France. Yeah. So that was the first session I played. Was 2000. 2009, I think, as Alpha Steppa in Strasbourg, and I haven't been back since. And I just got a booking.
I hope that's not because they won't let you come back.
Yeah, maybe I'm banned from the place. But no, I just got a booking for 2020, so that'll be 10 years later.
Nice.
Returning to Strasbourg, which is going to be nice. But yeah, that's how I started. Really, just it just kind of happened, and I can't say it was an intention or I had a particular drive to do it. I just enjoyed doing it. I'd been making music for really as long as I can remember.
You set up a label as well,
Mm-hmm.
and some of the releases on that label have done really well. And like, obviously, you just put a new album out as well. And like, so when did the label stuff start happening?
The label started shortly after 2010. So 2020 is 10 years of Steppa's Records.
Nice.
2010, I'd been a couple of years producing tunes as Alpha Steppa, and I tell you what happened. It was Jonah Dan. Big respect to the dub uncle Jonah Dan.
Big shout out to Jonah Dan.
Yeah, I played him a couple of my tunes once. Actually, he was interested in dubstep as well, so he gave me some vocals and stuff to work with. That he has thousands of vocals that
Yeah, he must have.
he
He's
hasn't
been making
even
music
released.
for so long.
Yeah. So he gave me a folder, and I started doing some remixes, and I made some tunes, and I made this one tune, and eventually he said, why didn't you just release something? And up until that stage, it never really crossed my mind.
It often takes someone like external to sort of say you should, because it's crossing that step between doing music for kind of fun and then someone saying no, this is there, and it's kind of sometimes it takes someone else to really help you realise that okay, maybe it is ready to be like, unleashed.
Like if my dad and my aunt, they have encouraged me all the way, but still that's your family. So.
Yeah, it's different when someone else who's like not family maybe is. I can see how that can help things along.
So I thought, sod it, I'll do it. I had the last of my student loan, which I was supposed to spend on
like food and shelter and
all that stuff. Yeah, I had to sacrifice some of that stuff. I spent it on a record, released a record, and it sold out really quickly.
Nice.
And I just couldn't believe it. I took the money and released another record, and I've been doing that for the following 10 years, up until now, today.
And it seems to take, here we are in Mexico, and we're doing a show, we're doing 2 shows together this weekend, and I know you did some shows over the last few weeks, and this is something that, because it's something that interests me, it comes up on the podcast a lot, is that it's amazing how sort of worldwide it's become. But you are someone who's really travelled a lot with the music. You've been to literally around the world with it.
I think I've played in around 40 countries now. I grew up on a council estate in Plymouth. Where I grew up, nobody even had a passport, so it never even occurred to me that, you would leave the country, let alone the council estate, really. That was just your community, your life. So I'm just so grateful to this day every time somebody invites me somewhere to go and play. And I love it, it really inspires me and opens my eyes. It's not just with the music, but it affects me in every way, with my outlook on life.
Well, it's great that you document it with these like videos you're making. I was involved in one in Poland with Dougie and Violin Boy, I think, and it was like freezing cold, and it was like, but it was great thing to do is to kind of show music, like interventions of music out on the street in crazy places and like that.
Yeah, that's the street dub thing that I do. Is like each video is kind of like a diary entry, so it's like a little snapshot of a vibe, and they're all quite spontaneous, so it's a vibe that we had somewhere. And also I use the videos as a means to highlight some kind of social injustice or something that I think should change in the world. But with the traveling, honestly, because of the climate crisis, I want to stop flying. I'm flying way too much, basically. have been over the past few years.
If you count up, if you have a very busy year travelling, you look at the hours you're spending in the sky, then it's serious.
So I think it's something we all need to think about, really. And I've moved now to mainland Europe, where it's going to be easier for me to drive to places or get the train or get the bus. And I'm going to just try to avoid flying as much as I can, basically.
Because we were talking before the interview, today is General Election Day in UK. I'm not sure exactly when this podcast is going to come out, but just to kind of give you some idea, we both obviously have an interest in politics, and we're talking about it, and that for me is like one of the sort of foundations of like roots reggae, is this kind of like political kind of thing. And so how did that kind of manifest itself for you, is like interest in politics?
Yeah, so I think probably initially through my family. I have some close family members who are quite active. They are active activists, and some old-time socialists in the family. So, yeah, when I was a kid, I used to have a T-shirt with the Subcomandante markers. So I was learning even about the Zapatistas and these kind of movements around the world from a young age. And, well, to tell you the truth, I am interested in politics. But I'm more interested in social justice, and I know that politics is intrinsically connected with social justice. But I'm not even that worried about the elections today, because I think ultimately the change is going to come from us, the people. Yeah,
because when I say politics, I use it quite loosely to talk, because people think of just political parties, but it's that whole social change and everything. And because that sort of leads me on to like a project that you're involved in that sounds quite interesting, is this kind of Leaving Babylon thing, and that seems to be sort of connected to your sort of social change kind of like, call it manifesto, but your social change ideas, and linking that to maybe to music and things. I was wondering if you want to tell us a bit about that.
Yep, for sure. Leaving Babylon is a community that we established a couple of years ago. Myself, Raz Tinney, and Don Fay, and another friend of ours, Laundry, Nigel, the whole family, the Steppa's family and beyond. We established this community, and it's basically about community, sustainability and self-sufficiency. So we don't view it so much as a political movement. We say that everybody's welcome, regardless of your politics or your background, what you're interested in. The thread that connects us is a longing for a sustainable future, and in fact a sustainable present, where we can live in balance with our ecosystems and provide a future for our children and our children's children, within which they can breathe oxygen and eat fresh food.
And this is coming about through some events as well. I mean, that's something I've seen, like a live show, which we can kind of talk about, but also I've not attended one, but I've seen advertised these events as well, and I was wondering what they're all about.
Yeah, so we've been doing some events. So we have a session or a live show with a sound system, and then before the session we have workshops. So we did one in Belgium last year, which was 3 days of workshops in the day and then sessions in the nighttime. Music in the nighttime.
And what kind of things going on at these workshops?
So there will be like talks and practical things mostly. So it can be things to do with permaculture, beekeeping, food forest, foraging, permaculture design, textiles, sustainable cosmetics, all the things that are embedded within our day-to-day lives that we take for granted. We are encouraging people to look at these things differently and strive for a more sustainable model. So basically, leaving Babylon, what we mean by leaving Babylon is quite simple. It's to take your money away from the systems and the institutions that you believe are wrong and that you believe are unsustainable. And in doing so, you take away their power bit by bit, one by one and step by step. And this is what I think of as leaving Babylon.
And with the music that's associated with it, because obviously it's the Life in Dub podcast, so there's really like a focus on music, then how does the music you do with Leaving Babylon differ from maybe other stuff that you're doing?
I think lyrically speaking, our the music that we've been making recently, it's very much linked with what we are talking about, what we're sharing, and what we are encouraging within the Leaving Babylon community. And again, it comes down to community and sustainability and self-sufficiency. So we just want to show people and tell people that we're in this together and we're not alone. Because when you're in this society and when you're witnessing day-to-day atrocities and injustices against humanity and also against the ecosystems upon which we depend, you start to feel quite hopeless, and I myself sometimes feel isolated and I feel like there's nothing I can do.
There's strength in numbers, isn't there?
Exactly, yeah. So we just want to provide a community that is there for people. So, for example, if you want to do something that you think is going to help, and you don't know where to begin, you can come to someone within the community and they can give you advice, or they can come over and help you, and we can link you with people in your area. So, like me, for example, I've left London. I'm living in the mountains now. I'm working on developing a permacultural site of my own and becoming as self-sufficient as possible.
So it's a whole new load of skills to learn.
Yeah, I'm a city boy. I always lived in the city. The best I've ever had is a tiny garden. So I tried to grow potatoes before, and I ended up putting more potatoes in than I pulled out. So to have this community, even for me personally, is a blessing. And I know that there's so many other people out there who would love to do something like this, and maybe they feel daunted or they don't know where to begin. And this community is here to remedy that.
And is it something that's like, because you seem to have been doing it for a few years now, is it something that's growing and gaining more interest? And
yeah, definitely. There's, as I say, there's everywhere you go, you meet more and more people who are interested in leaving the system behind and starting, or at least working towards a new way of living, an alternative way of living. You can still live comfortably and you can still live a happy and full life. And in fact, you probably end up living a more fulfilled life. You don't need these unsustainable systems and industries. They're not necessary. There are other ways. So everywhere I go, I see people who are doing the same thing, and that's also encouraging and inspiring me. I get inspired by all these people I meet around the world. I
guess what I find quite interesting about it as well is that sometimes there's a bit of a cliche around that kind of scene, for want of a better phrase.
Yeah.
And it's kind of what's interesting is you're still immersed in this kind of futuristic music and digital stuff's going on alongside it. It's not just let's get the junk band back together and make the junk album in dub.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know how that kind of sits. And
yeah, I suppose it's always been painted as a kind of hippie thing, right? And I don't wear flowers in my hair, and I'm not really hippie. Maybe
it's not a video podcast, but I can declare there are no flowers in Ben's hair today.
I think I probably am a closet hippie, really. But in truth, the hippies were onto something. they.
It's certainly a movement that's not showing any signs of. Like, it's not a flash in the pan.
No.
It's like it's a
Yep.
solid thing that's been going for a very long time.
And I think we've reached a stage now where things are so bad for so many people, so many communities around the world are suffering, and we're seeing the impact not just on our lives but on the planet, our home. So if that isn't enough to push you to take some kind of action, then I don't know what will be.
Oh, nice. It's great that it's like a collaborative thing as well, because that's certainly something that I associate you with, is these different collaborations. And I see you've just released an album, and it's like it's full of artists, and it's like you seem to have worked with a lot of people over the years. And is that something, because I know I enjoy collaborations. I've done so many collaborations with people. I've got a new one next year with Weeding Dub, and it's kind of something that I really thrive on, is working with other people on projects. So and that seems to be a big part of what you do. Would you say that's true?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this new album, with Dub Dynasty, that has 14 singers. I think we worked with. It's taken us 3 years to finish it.
14 singers.
14 singers.
That's quite something, isn't it?
You know, there's so many amazing artists out there, and so many amazing singers and writers that it would be a shame not to work with them. You know, it's not my intention to go working with everyone I come across, for sure. It's just somehow I think people are attracted to each other. People who come with a message, or who come with the same message or a similar message, they're attracted to each other. And if you're working within the same realms and you have the same intentions, then inevitably something collaborative will come from it, I think.
No, it's true, I agree. And also you seem to be good at linking up different people from like different countries as well, and that's that whole kind of like global family of reggae or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, but
some of them, they call me the Spider.
the Spider. Why do they call you the Spider?
Because they say it's like weaving a web. I always love to connect people, whether it's within social networks or within the world of music. I think it's important to bring people together. Community, once again, it comes back to community.
That's interesting, because obviously you do that. Like, you're living quite rurally now as well, and still kind of, that can be a bit of an isolating thing, but you seem to be combining it with getting together with people and collaborations. And
yeah, true. Now I'm living in the mountains. My bandwidth is Stone Age. So if you want to upload a file, you have to go off and make a cup of tea and maybe come back the next day and it's done.
Because I'm a city kid through and through. And
yeah.
Has it changed things for you living out in the sticks, as we call it in the UK?
Yeah, it's funny. I thought it would. But ultimately, it's kind of the same, like when you're making music, you're in the studio. So you're either in the studio in the city somewhere, or you're in the studio in the mountains. And the good thing about being in the studio in the mountains is when your head starts to spin and you've been too many hours behind the screen, and you can just open a door and you're in beautiful nature. Your lungs open, your mind opens, and you feel great, and then you can go back in the studio again.
But it's true about the studio, because if you I live in the city, you're living in the countryside, and it's like a lot of the time I'm on my own in the studio, or maybe working with one other person. It's not like kind of, because you have to have concentration in the studio. It's not really, there's a social thing to making music, totally, but when it comes to producing it and finishing it and getting the job done, it's quite a discipline, and you need some focus, and the door needs to be shut.
Yep.
Because the classic thing with a lot of music is building a studio in the countryside to get away from artists, like socialising too much. And so, yeah, it could be. I mean, are you doing some kind of new project that's based around you? Kind of.
Yeah, I think
living rurally.
That word.
Rural, yeah. But it's like where the rural sticks. I mean, there's so many ways it is. Rural, to people who are listening who maybe don't know, but the rural makes you think of tractors and agriculture and farmers. Would you agree with that?
I'd love to have a tractor, but I haven't got one, unfortunately. But yeah, no.
That's a first for the podcast as well. Nobody has said I would love to have a tractor. So, congratulations for that.
I come from Devon. I come from the southwest, so tractors are a way of life for us. What was the question anyway? So
it's talking about making a new album and that you being in a rural setting and how maybe that would change things.
I think it has made me more productive, to be honest. There are less distractions for sure. Then again, there are more distractions because if you're working on the land as well, then you got a lot. Especially now because I'm kind of new to this, so I'm learning. My learning curve is crazy. So what I try to do is get up in the morning, work outside in the morning, and then go and have lunch, and then just be in the studio or in the office and do whatever I need to do for the rest of the day. But no, I think in many ways it's much the same.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
to be honest.
I'm sure it is.
Yeah.
I'm sure it is. And I guess if you're going to work outside, you're best off doing that in the day. You're not going to be doing that at night.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, but honestly, I love it, and I would recommend it to anybody. Anybody who's thinking about doing the same, even if you're scared, just go for it and give it a try.
And what's just to continue this music thing is one thing that I kind of associate Alpha Steppa with is album projects as well, but also you're kind of younger person in the scene. I mean, I'm much older than you, and I come from a generation where albums were so important. But for new, like younger producers, there's less of a focus on the album, and it's like I was wondering why you have this thing about albums, because I love albums.
Well, thanks for calling me young. As time goes by, people stop using that word, I notice. For the album, yeah, I think I got that from my dad and Christine. They've released, I don't know how many albums, like 30, 40, something like that, about 40 albums, I think. And they're always working towards the next album. As far as I can remember, they're always pushing towards the next album. So an album is like a statement, an artistic statement, isn't it? It's a body of work. And yeah, I think today we kind of move towards a more instant grab.
Yeah, that immediate, I want to listen to this track.
Exactly, yeah. Especially with streaming, that's kind of how it goes. But then again, I think albums are also coming back. When you look at like trap and grime music, the new kind of hip-hop movements, there's still a big album scene amongst artists within those networks.
Yeah, because I don't follow those scenes, so it's good to hear that is sort of continuing. Because there's something like, I agree, there's something about an album being like body of work. It's kind of, and also like human attention span. Like 45 minutes or an hour is a good time to sit and listen to like.
Yeah. It's a lot of work though. So after every album,
it's exhausting.
I always feel like a sense of relief, and I say to myself, I'm never going to do that again, And then 6 months later, you're at it again.
Locked away in the studio.
I think there's a kind of short-term memory. It reminded me, somebody was telling me that when a woman has a baby, there's a part of the brain, or there's some process that actually blocks out the memory of the trauma of the pregnancy and the childbirth, so it doesn't
stop you from having another one, I guess.
It doesn't put you off having more babies in the future. I shouldn't be comparing making an album to having a baby. I apologise to all.
You were not the first person to do that, though. There's something about kind of,
No, it's true. When you make a body of work, I see it as like, it's like, I don't know if I'm going to continue talking on this vein, to be honest, because it's starting to sound a bit strange. But it's like a child in a way, and it's like, I don't know, for anybody who makes music, you would understand. Like, the music means so much to us.
It's a new thing you're bringing into the world, and then that is going to go off and have a life of its own, because that's what albums do. Is you make them and you release them, and then people bring them into their lives and they listen to them, and some become successful, some aren't so successful, but they take on a life of their own. And so it sounds crazy, but there are some parallels. I totally agree. I'm there with you.
It's true. You can spend an hour in the studio and you build like a relationship with the music, and you become very attached to it, and then comes the time where you have to just let it go, and you have to say, you know, there are going to be no more changes made to this or nothing. This is it. And that's actually a hurdle, you know. I know a lot of producers get stuck with production because they say they cannot finish songs, and I think it's getting past that point.
Yeah, and that's always been an issue for people. I've seen it over the years in so many people, that one of the stages you have to overcome if you want to have like a life in music is to be able to say, oh, it's out there. Because I know with my music, I never consider it finished. Someone said like music's never finished, it's just abandoned, and I totally agree with that. And when I listen to stuff I did, whether it's last week or 20 years ago, I could hear it and I can think, oh, I wish I'd changed this or finished that. But you just have to accept that it's out there.
It's about letting go. It's a big lesson I learned. And I'm not a perfectionist, but like I'm crazy about quality. Like I'm really interested in high quality in all aspects of life, really, especially with my work and with my music. So there's this kind of recognition that perfection is imperfection and imperfection is perfection. They are in fact the same thing. So when it comes to releasing music, you just have to reach a stage where it just clicks and it just feels right, and then let it go and move on with your life.
And then let it take on its life of its own.
Yeah.
Well, we've been chatting for a while now, and I don't know what's going on with all this background noise. I hope the interview turns out okay.
Yeah.
But one thing I'm asking all of the guests on the podcast is the Book of Dub. So I've opened the Book of Dub and I'm writing your name. I'm going to write Ben Alpha Steppa, or however you want me to write it. And what would you want written next to it? Something you consider that you've contributed, or something you want to be known about, you know, what you've done with your life in dub and reggae?
That's easy for me because I have a strict code that I stand by, and that is through my work I hope to uplift and to inspire and to extend an invitation into the present.
Nice. Yeah, some pretty profound stuff, definitely. It's like, do you write lyrics or anything like that?
Yeah, I love writing. Like, some of the lyrics, the songs that you're hearing, more and more so recently, they've been written by me.
Okay.
I love the old Sufi poetries, you know, and I'm not like a huge reader or anything, and I don't know that much about poetry, but when I read the Rumi and Hafiz and these kind of Persian poets, it just inspires me to write, you know, because there's a lot to say, you know. You can talk about social injustices, you can talk about longing for progress, you can talk about more spiritual matters. You know, you can write a love song that is an ambiguous love song that is either for your lover or for God, however you perceive God. And the whole thing I just find it hugely exciting.
Yeah, I was having a similar discussion with Maccabee about how, like, the power of words is that they can inspire and change, or they can like mess things up as well. It's like there's a lot of power in the simplicity of just some words, and that's one of the reasons I started the podcast, because I'm fascinated by people talking about their lives and kind of what's motivated them and inspired them. So
infinite interpretation, you know. People perceive your words however they feel to perceive them. I think ultimately, you know, look at the most important books in the world, like the Bible and the Quran and the Bhagavad Gita, all the translations and the different ways that these books can be read can lead to very extreme behaviors and beliefs on both ends of the spectrum. But again, this is, as you say, it is the power of words. And after all, we are making message music. So
True.
let us continue to share our message.
Nice. Well, Ben, thank you very much for joining me on this lovely rooftop in Mexico City. And thanks for being on the podcast.
It's been a pleasure, Steve. Big respect to you, of course, for your work. And this is a great initiative. And I hope people enjoy listening to all these artists that you've been interviewing. And just big up to yourself. And thank you for the work.
Cheers. Thanks again for joining me and Ben for this 8th episode of the Life in Dub podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to Life in Dub wherever you pick up your podcasts. Feel free to email me at vibronics@gmail.com with any comments and suggestions for the show. And as ever, you can visit the website lifeindub.com. And I'll see you all again in 2 weeks for the next Life in Dub podcast.